Welcome to Let's Talk Business, where Square business owners share their stories, the biggest lessons they learned, and their plans for the future. I'm Elon Peso, Square small business evangelist and former business owner. Today, we're talking to Charlie Good, the owner of Homestyle Charlie in Hershey, Pennsylvania. Thank you so much for joining us, Charlie.
Hi, everybody. Thanks, Peso. Great to be here. Excited to talk about my store, my business, where I've been and where I'm headed.
Well, I'm excited as well. And with that, let's talk business. First, can you give us a quick introduction?
Sure. I started my business as a handmade business, and I attended craft fairs, art shows. I make stained glass and metal ornaments and jewelry. I did that for several years. I opened up an Etsy shop. I slowly went into more of a brick-and-mortar situation. I was open several days a week at a local farm market store. And after a year of doing that, I opened up my brick-and-mortar 5 years ago. I'm currently in the process right now of closing down that brick-and-mortar, trying to reduce some expenses. And last year, I started getting into wholesale, selling my handmade items to other gift shops all around the country. And that has really proven to be the biggest driver of profit for my business. So I'm shifting from physical brick and mortar location into online and wholesale selling.
Very cool. Yeah, we'll dive into that whole journey in a bit. First, I'd love to start at the beginning. So what led you to start this up in the beginning and to start selling on Etsy, make all this yourself?
Sure. I've always been a creative person. I tell people my favorite day in kindergarten was Craft Tuesdays. Honestly, I can't remember if Tuesday was the actual day that the crafts took place, but I know there was one day we did crafts in kindergarten, and I made sure I wasn't sick or played sick that day. So I got to do whatever fun crafts they were doing in school. I was originally interested in architecture through school, but went for art education. So I graduated with an art education degree. I taught every age from kindergarten all the way up to college, computer design, graphic design, arts and crafts to kindergartners. And I did that for several years. And then I spent probably almost 20 years in corporate graphic design, working with printers, advertising agencies, medical insurance corporations. And after about 20 years of doing that, I think I hit a midlife crisis. And I thought to myself, I can't do this for the rest of my life. What else am I going to do next? So I sort of retired and left my day job, which probably wasn't the smartest move because I really didn't have all of the infrastructure in place that I needed to do. But it really forced me and kickstarted me into creating my own business. And like I mentioned before, I started doing art and craft fairs, traveling around with a big white tent, and got tired of that pretty quickly. And started this brick and mortar journey, which I'm sort of getting ready and finishing up and then going into wholesale.
Very cool. Yeah, that's incredible that you have had this passion throughout your whole life of creating art, and you've been able to channel that in a few different ways throughout your life and now in this latest venture. Yeah, let's jump into that. Can you walk us through like this thought process, this decision-making process of you built the business up to being this brick and mortar location. Now you're deciding to wind that down. How did that come about?
When I first opened the brick and mortar business, I was just selling my handmade items. And I very quickly figured out, first, I can't produce enough to stock an entire retail store with just my own items. So I started bringing in additional items made by other people, also some commercially made products like greeting cards, gift items, bath and body products, anything that would sort of tie in with what I was producing myself. And without really intending to, I created an entire gift shop, which became the retail brick and mortar business. And in trying to supply that brick and mortar gift shop, I learned about buying wholesale. I learned about what wholesale website resources are available to me as a store buyer. And that in turn got me really interested. What if I turn the tables? What if I decide to work on the wholesale side and supply other gift shops what I make? So over the course of the last 5 years, as I've been supplying and adding inventory to my own brick and mortar gift shop, I'm sort of in the back of my mind figuring out how can I turn that around and become the supplier to other gift shops.
Yeah, very cool. So what did you learn there? What did you figure out and how to become a supplier to others?
Well, one of the things that I learned that was really important was making sure all your numbers add up. When you're supplying wholesale, you really have to take into account your profit margins, especially if you're a handmade maker and you're trying to sell your handmade items wholesale. You have to make sure that your costs for all of your supplies. You also have to account for your time and what you want to be paid, because you're not in this to lose money. You want to make money as a business. So you have to account for the hours that you spend making your products and factoring that in. You also want to account for any overhead, things like the electricity that you're using in your studio, or if you're working at your dining room table. Those kinds of things you have to factor into what it costs you to produce your products, and in turn make sure you're marking that up when you're selling it, that you're not losing money and you're actually making money. Because as a wholesale buyer, if a store is buying your product, they also remember in turn, they need to make money too. So the store buying your product, they're going to mark it up an additional time. So in the end, you have to think about what is an appropriate retail price. What is somebody willing to pay for the product that you're producing? And if those numbers don't add up, you're probably not going to be as successful in wholesale as you could be. For example, if you're making a beaded necklace, and by the time you factor in all of your beads, your supplies, the amount of time it's taking you to make that necklace, and you factored in the retail price of this item could be $120. Is somebody really going to take a look at your product and spend that amount of money at a retail store? If they are, that's great. Then you might have a viable wholesale product. If they're not willing to spend that, you've got to go back, recalculate, readjust. Maybe your expenses for your beads are too high. Can you get your beads cheaper? Can you lose a step in the production process so you can make your jewelry faster? So all of those technical things and those numbers and processes are really important when you're trying to figure out if wholesale is going to be right for you.
Yeah, those are really good points. And I think for any business, but especially something that is manufactured that you're making yourself, it's even more important, like you said, to keep all of those costs in mind. Now, I'd love to hear, like, with your personal experience and pricing things out. And I think you have the benefit there of having sold at retail and now you're thinking about doing it wholesale. What have been sort of the differences there, or the things that you personally picked up that have helped in that switch in terms of pricing and in terms of manufacturing and in terms of everything there?
I think just a matter of making sure you're making notes, you're keeping logs, whether it's on scraps of paper, napkins, whether you're have a complete Excel spreadsheet, which probably is the best thing to do if you're able to do that. Just start making your products. Make a list. What are your raw materials? What do you need to make your product? Where are you sourcing them from? What are your costs? Write them all down. And as you begin making them, actually start timing yourself. How long does it take me to make this? Can I make it in 2 minutes? Can I make it in an hour? Does it take me 8 or 9 hours to make this item? Write that down. Just put down your raw numbers, your raw figures, your dollar amounts, and then calculate it all up. How much time is it taking me? And assign that a dollar value. Do you want to make $5 an hour, $10, $20 an hour, whatever it is, and factor that in to how long it's taking you to make your product. And that's your actual expenses, and make sure that when you price your items that you can recoup that. And one thing to remember is wholesale isn't for everybody. If you can't make it in wholesale, that's fine. You can certainly sell direct to consumer as a retail seller. If you can get your numbers down, that's great. Wholesale might be right for you. But the first step is to write everything down, calculate all your costs, calculate all your time, all your resources. Make sure you're paying yourself. Make sure you're getting what you think you deserve. And also keep in mind what the market will bear.
Yeah, totally. So with that, how did you personally, with your business, make that determination that wholesale is the best option for you and your business?
I had one item that was like really popular when I went to craft and art shows. They're the stained glass. They're glass and metal ornaments. Some are stained glass. Some are made with actual printed reproductions, and they became really popular. So I had to learn how to make a lot of them. And the more I made, the quicker that I could make them. Also, the cheaper that I could make them, the more I could sell. And in turn, they became my biggest moneymaker. So through trial and error, and also demand from what my customers were saying that they liked the best from me, I sort of figured out this could be a product that potentially could be successful transitioning into the wholesale market. A big factor in terms of selling wholesale successfully is, can you produce things or supply things in enough quantity? Maybe you can make that beaded necklace, but you can only make 1 or 2 a week. Can you get that down to maybe making 2 a day? So in a week's time, you've got a dozen necklaces. So the larger quantities that you can make, remember, you want to be able to supply many retail stores. You might have 10 retail stores, 100 retail stores, but you need to be able to supply them successfully with enough product for them to sell. So keep that in mind as well as you're calculating how much all of your raw materials are costing you, and how quickly you can actually produce those items.
Yeah. With that, how did you find the places to sell to? Like, how many places are you selling wholesale to? And what's that process of finding them and setting up those deals like?
Well, all it takes is one to start with. I always tell people when I'm talking about wholesale, if you make one successful wholesale sale, you got proof of concept. You know that you could be on the right track to expanding that one store into 5, 10, 20, maybe 100 stores. So if you can just get that one store, that first store, it sort of gets the ball rolling. As a retail store owner myself, I developed those connections and learned where I can buy supplies from. There are some great wholesale marketplaces online. If you think about things like Etsy and eBay, those are direct to consumers selling products and handmade items to other people directly. There are also wholesale equivalents to things like eBay, Etsy. One is called Fair. There are a few others, although Fair basically is the dominant player in the market right now. But through Fair, as a retail store owner, I can buy and supply my retail store with items that are either produced by large manufacturers or small independent craftspeople. So as a retail store buyer, I learned that I myself could successfully join one of those as a producer. So that led me to my first retail store account. And again, once you've got the one retail store, it gives you enough confidence that, hey, maybe I can get the second store, 5 stores, 10 stores. Currently, my handmade items are in about 125 other gift shops all across the country. But I certainly didn't start off right off the bat with 125. Like I said, I started with one store, and over the course of probably 18 months, I'm now in 125 retail stores. So it's been a journey, a big learning experience. It's been exciting, and I'm looking forward to continuing that. I'm not sure how far to set my sights, but I'm adding new retail stores every week. So as long as that's growing, I'm considering it a success.
Yeah, that sounds like a huge success to go from 1 to over 100 in a year and a half. That's fantastic. I had no idea that sites like Fair existed where it's that wholesale equivalent, like you said. I'm curious, are you selling, when you sell wholesale, do you sell directly to stores, or do you also sell to essentially other wholesalers and other suppliers as well?
It's mainly direct to other stores. Like when an order comes in, it's basically just another small gift shop that might be ordering. There are also some larger accounts, well, art museums, regional kind of craft fairs that have brick and mortar locations. Will buy through Fair. I myself have not been approached by any larger retailers, let's say like Target or Walmart or some of the national chain stores, but that's not out of the question for people that are selling on wholesale to be approached by national retailers like that.
Very cool. Yeah, this adding of wholesale sounds like a really cool thing that could work for a lot of different businesses. How did you decide between just adding wholesale and expanding into that versus this path that you're taking of switching over and closing down your brick and mortar?
I think probably the biggest precipitator of making the decision was during the pandemic and COVID shutdowns. I opened up my brick and mortar probably a year before COVID came about, and things were progressing really well. I was getting a local audience. I was getting a lot of new customers into the brick and mortar store. And then all of a sudden, everything had to shut down. So my one stream of revenue at a physical brick and mortar location was shut off. It's very scary, very disheartening, and it leads to a lot of questions for a small business owner. People can make a lot of different decisions going forward. Restaurants had to expand pickup locations, call ahead. They'd bring your food out to the curb. Some gift shops also did the same. I actually started to expand my online site. I took my Square site that I had already set up, which wasn't getting a lot of attention from me, and in turn wasn't getting a lot of online orders. But during the COVID shutdowns, that became a priority to expand to online sales. Now that did increase, but it didn't increase enough for me to feel comfortable moving my business forward. So that's really started the ball rolling into thinking about what else can I do to diversify my revenue streams. And wholesale rose to the top of the list. I decided, well, gee, maybe if my brick and mortar isn't doing well, maybe there's brick and mortar stores in other parts of the country that have had more success, either through their online stores or in their particular region or market. They're not shut down, or they're not, under the same restrictions that my particular store is. So the pandemic was a huge factor in the way that I had to decide to transform my business.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Now, what has been that process of winding down and closing down that location been like? I'm sure it's a hard thing, both emotionally in a way, something that you've built up, but also physically in all of those steps and processes.
It's been a roller coaster. It has been mixed emotions. It's bittersweet. You build a store from the ground up, and you spend 5 years devoted to it. I started with a beige box that basically used to be an insurance sales office. And, you do decorating, you do remodeling. I spent a lot of time buying and designing store fixtures, searching for just the right inventory and gift items to supply and fill out your shelves. All of that is pretty, it takes a toll. It does emotionally. I started thinking about closing the retail store probably over half a year ago. So every day when I came in, I would look around and I would think, someday soon things are going to change. And it was a slow process, but you do get to the point emotionally that you're ready. Like right now, I'm like probably 6 weeks away from actually not showing up here every day. And I'm really ready. I'm really excited for the next chapter. But the biggest daunting next step is, how do I unload an entire store of inventory? You've got to have closing sales. You try to recoup as much money that you put into the inventory buying it by having a closing sale going at a business sale. And there are huge fixtures, wooden bookcases, cash wrap counters, computers, printers, lights, chairs, all of these things that you stock a retail store with. How do you get rid of it? I've been really fortunate that I've also developed relationships with other local businesses and store owners, and they've been really willing to take those things off of my hands and also pay me a little bit for it. So the selling of the actual store fixtures and clearing it out is going a lot smoother than I anticipated. I was really fearful for a long time I'd be stuck not knowing how I was going to get rid of half of what I had acquired over the last 5 years.
Yeah, for sure. That's, like you said, it's hard. I've been there too. I had my business and we sold and left. And yeah, that last period of time where you're walking in and you're doing things for the last time, it's hard, but it's really great that you have those connections and you have those systems in place. And that definitely sounds like it's going to make things a lot easier. I'm curious, what has customer response been like?
Most of the customers have been really great. They come in and they're like, gee, I'm really sorry you're closing. I loved your store. I loved your items. You had the best greeting cards. Where am I going to find them now? And that's great to hear. It's kind of funny, though, when you hear something like that from somebody that only comes into your store once every 3 or 4 months. And they come in and they say that, and I think to myself, well, maybe instead of coming every 3 or 4 months, maybe if you came every 3 or 4 weeks and bought some things from me, I wouldn't be closing down. So it's sort of an interesting, one of the things that I read about when I was reading up on, how to get rid of a retail store. You Google stuff like that. People say the vultures come out, and I can attest the vultures have come out. I've had strange people come into the store I've never seen before with the strangest questions. Are you a Hallmark store? Do you sell furniture? And they have no idea about my business, and they come in here because I guess they heard the store's closing and they want like some really great deal. And they're surprised that I'm not giving things away to them. So I've had a mix of customers come in. They've been loyal customers. I see them at least once a month, and they're really sad to see me go. And I'll miss them too. I'll be sad to see them. And then on the other side of that, again, the vultures come out trying to pick the bones from a closing business. So it's really been an interesting time the last couple of months.
Yeah, that definitely sounds like it's hard to deal with that group when, yes, you need to do some closing sales and then you need to liquidate some things, but also, yeah, you still need to be a business and make some money off of it. But I think the other side, those regular and even irregular customers, yes, if they came more, potentially you would have stayed in business. But I think it does say a lot that even if they've only come once a quarter or once a year, they still have that connection to you and you've still made that big of an impression. I think that's really cool. And yeah, hopefully a lot of them will follow along and pick up your stuff through your new your wholesale clients. So that'll be cool. In terms of the future, what does, you said you're not fully like have a plan yet of setting goals and all that, but part of being a business owner is also just being a human. So what do you want your life and work life to look like? Where do you see things going?
I think one of the great things about being a small business owner is you certainly have a lot more flexibility in terms of designing your happiness, designing your life, and how you want everything to work out. When I started the brick-and-mortar business, I certainly did have the ability to sort of create the kind of life that I wanted. It wasn't as flexible as I would like it to be. In saying that, what I mean is when you have a physical brick-and-mortar store, there are certain hours that you have to show up. Customers expect you to be at the store, or your staff and employees need help and assistance. So you're not totally free to like wake up whenever you want and like decide not to go into the office today, or have the luxury of calling in sick. Who are you going to call in sick to? Yourself? And you're certainly not going to have sick pay, more than likely, if you're running your own business. So there's always been some kind of flexibility in terms of designing the kind of life that you want to live as a small business owner. And that's a wonderful thing. That's one of the biggest advantages I think of being a small business owner. Well, now in saying that, there are different businesses that allow you different levels of freedom and flexibility. And having a brick and mortar store, you're tied to maybe a physical location, you're tied to operating hours. What I'm hoping to do and moving into more of a wholesale business is having a little bit more flexibility in terms of operating hours. I have a studio in my home, so if I want to sleep in late, maybe I can sleep in late. If I want to work till midnight in the studio, I can certainly do that. So being more of a wholesaler versus a brick and mortar retailer, I still have certain obligations and responsibilities. If I get an order, I have to make sure that the items are made, fulfilled, shipped out when I promise they're going to be shipped out. But in doing that, I also have a little bit more flexibility. Do I want to sleep in one morning? Do I want to work till midnight another morning? So it's sort of a give and take in terms of how much freedom and flexibility you have in designing what kind of life you want to live as a small business owner. And it really depends on what particular business you get yourself into.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think a lot of people have that perception of a small business owner as being able to make their own schedule, but it is very limited when you have a brick and mortar, when you have a location, you have those expectations. So yeah, this definitely sounds like a good way for you to get some of that freedom and control back. Wonderful. This has been so fantastic to hear your story and to hear your experiences. And I'm sure it's going to help a lot of folks learn and potentially make similar decisions. Do you have anything else that you want to share from your experience here?
I guess the biggest advice I could give any small business owner is take each day and just do the best that you can, whether you're operating a brick and mortar business, whether you're struggling, operating a restaurant, dealing with staffing issues, if you're a wholesaler dealing with supply issues and manufacturing issues. Wake up, do the best that you can each day, and hopefully all of those days are going to add up to some great weeks, some great months, and eventually you'll have several years of great success under your belt.
I love that. Thank you so much. Thanks again for joining and sharing so much. Where can people find you and your stuff online moving forward?
Well, I'm an Etsy shop. If you go on Etsy and search Homestyle Charlie, you'll find my Etsy shop. That's where I sell my handmade ornaments direct to consumers. If you are a retail store owner and you're interested in purchasing wholesale, you can check out my own website, which is homestylecharlie.com, and you'll find links to order wholesale. You'll also find links to Fair if you are a current Fair customer, or you can find out how you can sign up as a store to buy from Fair.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And that's all we have. We'll see you in the community. Thank you.